After I refused to fund my sister's $50,000 dream wedding, she invited me to a birthday dinner. 3 lawyers sat waiting with papers. She said, "Just sign or this gets messy." And I said, "Meet my husband." What he pulled out. The text came on a Tuesday afternoon in early December while I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk. "Can we talk? It's important. Coffee tomorrow." From Rebecca, my younger sister by 3 years. We hadn't spoken much since Thanksgiving when she'd announced her engagement to Derek, a personal trainer she'd been dating for 8 months. I should have known something was brewing. We met at a cafe downtown, one of those trendy places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Rebecca looked radiant, her engagement ring catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. She ordered a matcha latte and a croissant, then launched into what she called her vision. "I want the Ashford estate," she said, scrolling through photos on her phone. "Look at these gardens, Sheila, the fountain courtyard. The ballroom holds 300 guests." I recognized the venue. My colleague had gotten married there 2 years ago. The price tag had been astronomical. "It's beautiful," I said. "I've already spoken with their event coordinator. We can book for next May if we put down a deposit this month." She leaned forward, eyes bright with excitement. "The total package is $50,000. "But Sheila, it's my dream wedding. I've literally imagined this day since I was 7 years old." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. 50,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but think about what we're getting. The venue, catering, flowers, a live band, open bar, professional photography, videography. Rebecca, that's more than most people spend on a car. Her expression shifted, the brightness dimming. "I thought you'd understand. You always said family comes first." "I do understand, but you make good money, Sheila. Your tech consulting firm has been doing incredibly well. I've seen the articles about your company's expansion." She reached across the table, grabbing my hand. "I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. Mom and Dad can contribute maybe $5,000. Derek's parents are helping with the honeymoon, but we need help with the venue." My stomach dropped. "You're asking me to pay for your wedding?" "Not all of it, just the venue portion. 25,000. I can figure out the rest." $25,000. I'd worked brutal hours to build my business from nothing. 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, relationships that fell apart because I was always working. Every dollar represented sacrifice. "I can't," I said quietly. Rebecca's face hardened. "Can't or won't?" "Both. That's an enormous amount of money to spend on a single day." "So my wedding isn't worth it?" Her voice rose, drawing looks from nearby tables. "Your own sister's happiness isn't worth it." "That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying $50,000 for a wedding is excessive and I can't justify. You just bought a Tesla last month. I saw it on your Instagram." "I bought that with money I earned after years of building my business. And I'm asking you to share some of that success with your family." Tears welled in her eyes. "I've always looked up to you. You were supposed to be there for me." The guilt hit hard, exactly as she intended, but I held firm. "I am happy to contribute a reasonable amount. 5,000 toward whatever you need, but I can't fund the entire venue." She stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "Forget it. I should have known better than to ask someone who values money over family." "Rebecca." But she was already walking out, leaving her half-finished latte and untouched croissant on the table. The silent treatment lasted 3 weeks. Mom called twice, saying I should reconsider, that Rebecca was heartbroken. Dad stayed neutral, which told me everything. My older brother Marcus, send a single text. Let her figure it out herself. Not your responsibility. Then Rebecca called. "I'm sorry," she said, voice thick with emotion. "I was awful to you. The stress of wedding planning got to me, and I took it out on you. Can we talk? Clear the air." Relief flooded through me. "Of course. I'm sorry, too. I could have been more supportive. Let's have dinner. There's a new Italian place on Merchant Street. My treat as an apology." We set a date for the following Thursday. She sent the address, and I spent the afternoon finishing work early so I could arrive on time. The restaurant was upscale, white tablecloths, and soft jazz playing overhead. The hostess led me to a private dining room in the back. That's when I saw them. Rebecca sat at the head of a long table flanked by 3 people in business suits, 2 men and 1 woman, all with leather portfolios open in front of them. The atmosphere was formal, cold. This wasn't a reconciliation dinner. "Sheila, thank you for coming." Rebecca's voice carried none of the warmth from our phone call. "Please sit down." My instinct screamed at me to leave. Instead, I remained standing. "What is this?" "These are my attorneys." She gestured to the 3 lawyers. Mr. Harrison, Miss Chen, and Mr. Rodriguez. "We need to discuss a legal matter." Legal matter. The woman, Miss Chen, slid a thick document across the table. "Miss Sheila Patterson, we're here regarding a loan agreement between you and your sister, Rebecca Patterson, dated November 15th of last year." My mind raced. "There's no loan agreement. I never loaned Rebecca any money." "Actually," Mr. Harrison said, his tone measured and professional, "there are text messages, witness conversations, and documentation suggesting otherwise." Rebecca met my eyes, her expression unreadable. "You promised at Thanksgiving dinner in front of the whole family that you'd help with my wedding. Multiple people heard you. I said I'd contribute what I could reasonably afford. I never agreed to. You said, and I quote, 'I'll help make your day special.'" Rebecca pulled out her phone, reading from the screen. "That was your exact wording. That's not a legally binding promise to pay $50,000. Mr. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Miss Patterson, your sister has proceeded with wedding planning based on your verbal commitment. She signed contracts, put down deposits, incurred significant debt, all with a reasonable expectation that you would fulfill your promise. This is insane. I explicitly told her I couldn't pay for the venue after she'd already begun planning based on your initial agreement." Miss Chen tapped the document. "We're prepared to file a civil suit for promissory estoppel unless we can reach an agreement tonight." The room spun. "Promissory what?" "It's a legal principle," Mr. Harrison explained. "When someone makes a promise and another party reasonably relies on that promise to their detriment, the promise can be enforced even without a formal contract. This is extortion." "This is protecting my client's interests," Miss Chen said coolly. "Your sister has invested over $15,000 in deposits and non-refundable expenses. She's facing financial ruin because you reneged on your commitment." I looked at Rebecca, searching for any sign of the sister I'd grown up with. "You're really doing this? You left me no choice." Her job was set, determined. "Just sign the agreement. It's a payment plan. $5,000 a month for 5 months. That covers the venue. You can afford it. This doesn't have to get messy. And if I refuse, then we file suit tomorrow morning," Mr. Rodriguez said. "Discovery, depositions, court appearances. It'll be expensive in public. Local media loves stories about family disputes, especially involving successful business owners." The threat was clear. They dragged my name through the mud, potentially damaging my company's reputation. Clients wouldn't want to work with someone embroiled in a family lawsuit. "I need time to think. Sign tonight or we proceed with legal action." Rebecca's voice was ice. "Your choice." A knock at the door interrupted the standoff. The hostess peeked in, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a gentleman here insisting he needs to join this party." "We're not expecting anyone else," Miss Chen said sharply. "Actually," I said, finding my voice, "that would be my husband." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Your what?" James walked in, his 6'2" frame commanding immediate attention. He wore a tailored navy suit, the one he reserved for important client meetings. But it was what he carried that made the 3 lawyers sit up straighter, his own leather portfolio identical to theirs. "Sorry I'm late, sweetheart." He kissed my cheek, then turned to the table with a polite smile. "James Patterson, Sheila's husband. And you are?" "Wait," Rebecca stammered. "You got married when?" "7 months ago," I said. City Hall, quiet ceremony in early May. "We were planning to tell the family of Christmas, but you stopped speaking to me." The moment hung in the air, Rebecca's shock palpable. I'd met James 2 years ago at a tech conference in Seattle. He'd been the keynote speaker on intellectual property law in the digital age, and I'd approached him afterward with questions about protecting my company's proprietary software. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner became regular weekend visits despite living in different cities, and eventually he relocated his practice to be closer to me. We kept our relationship relatively private, not out of secrecy, but because we both valued having something that was just ours. My family knew I was seeing someone. But between Rebecca's wedding obsession and the subsequent silent treatment, the right moment to announce our marriage never materialized. Rebecca looked between James and me, her expression cycling through confusion, hurt, and something that might have been embarrassment. "I can't believe you didn't tell me. You made it pretty clear you weren't interested in talking about anything except your wedding," I said, keeping my voice level. Every conversation circled back to venues and guest lists and flower arrangements. When I tried to share other news, you changed the subject back to wedding planning. Miss Chan cleared her throat, attempting to regain control of the room. "While family revelations are touching, we're here to discuss—" "Actually," James interrupted smoothly, "I'd like to understand exactly what we're discussing. May I see the document you presented to my wife?" He took the papers, scanning them with the practiced eye of someone who reviewed contracts daily. I watched his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly, the only sign of anger he allowed to show. After 3 full minutes of silence, he set the document down. "This is remarkably bold," he said, his tone neutral, but carrying an undercurrent that made Mr. Rodriguez shift in his seat. "Miss Chen, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Rodriguez, I'm curious about your firm's vetting process before taking on contingency cases, because what you have here is at best wishful thinking masquerading as legal theory." "Mr. Patterson," Miss Chen began, "we thoroughly reviewed—" "Have you?" James pulled out a chair next to mine, setting his portfolio on the table with a soft thud. His movements were deliberate, controlled. I'd seen him like this during the one board meeting I'd attended at his firm, calm on the surface, strategic underneath. Because if you had, you'd recognize the gaping holes in your promissory estoppel argument. But let's set that aside momentarily. He turned to Rebecca, and something in his expression made her flinch. "Rebecca, before we get into the legal aspects, I want to understand something. You invited Sheila here under false pretenses, told her you wanted to apologize and reconcile so you could ambush her with attorneys and coerce her into signing a financial agreement. Is that accurate?" Rebecca opened her mouth, closed it, then looked to Miss Chen for guidance. "You don't have to answer that," Miss Chen said quickly. "She really doesn't," James agreed. "But I think we all know the answer. What I'm trying to understand is the thought process. Because from where I'm sitting, you've committed to a strategy that will irreparably damage your relationship with your sister, potentially expose you to counter-litigation, and at best, net you exactly nothing. So what was the calculation here?" "I just want what I'm owed," Rebecca said, her voice small. "You're not owed anything," James said flatly. "That's the fundamental flaw in your entire approach. Sheila offered to contribute $5,000 as a gift, not a loan, not an obligation, but a voluntary gesture of familial support. You rejected that offer and instead concocted this scheme to extract 10 times that amount through intimidation." Mr. Harrison intervened, apparently deciding Miss Chen needed backup. "Mr. Patterson, your characterization of our legal strategy is—" "Accurate," James finished, "and we both know it. I've been practicing law for 15 years. I've seen plenty of weak cases propped up by aggressive tactics, hoping the defendant will settle rather than fight. This is textbook litigation bullying, except you picked the wrong target." He opened his portfolio, removing a document of his own. I caught a glimpse of the header. It was from his firm, but I couldn't read the details from my angle. "Let me be crystal clear about the situation you're in," James continued, his voice steady and professional. "This isn't a negotiation. This is me explaining why you're going to leave this restaurant, advise your client to drop this matter entirely, and hope that Sheila is feeling generous enough not to pursue sanctions against you for bringing a frivolous claim." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Miss Chen's professional composure cracked slightly, and I saw genuine concern flicker across her features. "Mr. Patterson," she said carefully, "I understand you're protective of your wife, but threatening opposing counsel—" "I'm not threatening anyone," James said. "I'm stating facts. Sheila is my family, which makes this very much my business, especially since my wife's name is being used to pursue a fraudulent claim." "Fraudulent?" Miss Chen's tone sharpened. "That's a serious accusation. Not as serious as attempted civil extortion." James slid his business card across the table. James Patterson, senior partner, Patterson Lee and Associates. We specialize in contract law and fraud cases. The color drained from Rebecca's face. Let me walk you through the problems with your theory, James continued, his voice pleasant, but carrying the weight of someone who had argued before judges countless times. First, promisorious requires a clear and definite promise. I'll help make your day special is vague and subjective. No court would interpret that as a commitment to pay a specific dollar amount. He turned a page in his document. Kia. Second, even if there was a clear promise, which there wasn't, your client had no reasonable basis to rely on it after Miss Sheila Patterson explicitly refused to fund the venue on December 3rd. Yet Miss Rebecca Patterson continued booking services after that date, knowing the funds wouldn't be provided. Mr. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. Third, James said, pulling up several printed screenshots, I have text messages where Miss Rebecca Patterson tells her friend, and I quote, Sheila said no, but I'm booking everything anyway. Once it's done, she'll have to pay or look like an asshole. Where did you get those messages? Rebecca's voice cracked. Your friend Stephanie is engaged to my law partner. She showed him the text when you asked her to be a witness. Small world. James pulled out another document. But let's talk about what really concerns me. This meeting, you invited my wife here under false pretenses, ambushed her with 3 attorneys, and threatened her with a lawsuit designed to harm her business reputation unless she signed an agreement under duress. He paused, letting that sink in, then continued in a voice that could have frozen water. That's not aggressive liaring. That's extortion dressed up in business casual. Mr. Rodriguez finally spoke up, his voice defensive. We're simply pursuing our client's legitimate interests through legal channels. There's nothing legitimate about this, James cut him off. You know it, I know it, and frankly, I think your client is starting to realize it too. He glanced at Rebecca, whose face had gone pale. The statute for civil extortion in this state is quite specific. Threatening legal action with the primary intent of extracting payment when you know the underlying claim is without merit crosses a legal line. That's a serious accusation, Miss Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction. It's a serious situation, James replied, one that carries both civil and criminal implications. Now, I'm not suggesting anyone here intended to break the law. I think what happened is relatively straightforward. Miss Rebecca Patterson came to your firm, presented a compelling narrative about being wronged by her wealthy sister, and you saw an opportunity for a quick settlement. You drafted paperwork that looks impressive, scheduled this ambush meeting, and hoped Sheila would pay to make the problem disappear. He leaned forward slightly. What you didn't account for is that Sheila happens to be married to someone who does this for a living. Someone who knows exactly how weak your position is and exactly what remedies are available when attorneys cross ethical boundaries. The room was silent, except for the muted sounds of the restaurant beyond the closed door. I could see the calculation happening in real time on the lawyers' faces. Was fighting this worth the risk? Let me make you an offer, James said, his tone shifting to something almost conciliatory. You walk away right now. Advise Miss Patterson that her claim has no merit. We'll consider this an unfortunate misunderstanding and leave it at that. No bar complaints, no countersuits, no public records of frivolous litigation. And if we don't? Mr. Harrison asked, though he sounded like he already knew the answer. Then tomorrow morning I file a comprehensive motion to dismiss with prejudice, including a request for sanctions under Rule 11. I'll attach exhibits demonstrating that you knew or should have known this claim was baseless. I'll subpoena all communications between your firm and Miss Patterson, and I'll make sure every attorney in this city knows about the firm that tried to shake down a tech entrepreneur with a manufactured family dispute. James pulled out yet another document from his portfolio. I'll also file a counterclaim for malicious prosecution, abuse of process, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil extortion. Discovery in that case will be extensive. We'll depose Miss Patterson about her planning, her motivations, every conversation she had about this scheme. We'll depose each of you about your due diligence or lack thereof. He spread several pages across the table. My firm's hourly rate is $600 per hour, my associate's bill at $400, paralegals at $200. A case like this could easily generate 200 billable hours before trial, and if we go to trial, double that. You're looking at potential liability in the 6 figures, not including whatever damages a jury might award for emotional distress. Miss Chen was no longer making eye contact. Mr. Rodriguez had started gathering his papers. Only Mr. Harrison maintained his composure, but even he looked deeply uncomfortable. "There's one more thing," James said quietly. "Sheila is not just my wife. She's someone I respect deeply, someone who built a successful business through intelligence and hard work. Watching her be manipulated by her own sister, seeing her question whether she did something wrong when she simply set a reasonable boundary, that makes me angry in ways I can't fully articulate in professional language." He looked directly at Rebecca. "You had a sister who loved you, who offered to help within her means, who wanted to celebrate your marriage, and you threw that away for a fantasy wedding you couldn't afford. Worse, when she wouldn't enable your poor financial decisions. You tried to destroy her reputation and extract money through legal intimidation. I genuinely hope you can live with that choice, because the sister you once had may never fully trust you again." Rebecca was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She was still my sister after all, but a larger part remained frozen in anger and betrayal. "Miss Chen, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Rodriguez," James said, standing and buttoning his suit jacket. "You have 15 minutes to discuss this with your client and make a decision. Sheila and I will be in the main dining room. When you're ready, you can either come apologize and end this, or you can prepare for the most expensive mistake of your legal careers. Your choice." He offered me his hand, and I took it gratefully. My legs felt shaky as we walked out, leaving the lawyers in stunned silence behind us. In the main dining room, James ordered us both a glass of wine. My hands were shaking. "How did you know?" I asked. "I didn't, not for certain. But when you told me about the dinner invitation, something felt off. Rebecca had been radio silent for weeks, then suddenly wanted to reconcile. The location being a private room sealed it. So I did some checking." He squeezed my hand. "Your brother Marcus had heard Rebecca bragging about teaching you a lesson. He called me this afternoon." She really thought she could force me to pay. She surrounded herself with lawyers who probably told her what she wanted to hear, charged her a hefty consultation fee, and hoped you'd cave under pressure. He sipped his wine. Bad attorneys exist, unfortunately. 10 minutes later, Rebecca appeared alone. Her face was blotchy from crying, makeup smeared. She slid into the empty chair at our table without being invited. "The lawyers are leaving," she said quietly. "They advised me to end this." "Smart lawyers after all," James murmured. Rebecca looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time that evening. I don't know what happened to me. Planning this wedding became an obsession. Derek kept saying we should scale back, but I couldn't let go of this perfect vision I'd built in my head. Her voice broke. "Then when you said no, I felt like you were crushing my dreams, like you didn't care about me. And instead of accepting that maybe my dreams were unreasonable, I decided you were the villain. You tried to extort me," I said, the words heavy. "I know. God, Sheila, I know." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I convinced myself I was the victim, that you were being selfish. The lawyers fed into that, telling me we had a case, that family promises meant something legally. I wanted to believe them because it meant I could get what I wanted and punish you for saying no." She wiped at her face with a napkin. But hearing James lay it all out, seeing how close I came to destroying everything between us, I'm sick over it. I'm so sorry. The sincerity in her voice cut through my anger. This was my sister again, not the stranger who'd ambushed me with lawyers. "What are you going to do about the wedding?" I asked. "Derek and I are going to the courthouse next month. His parents are hosting a small reception at their house afterward. Nothing fancy, just people who actually care about us celebrating." She managed a weak smile. "Turns out he's been worried about the wedding cost too, but didn't want to disappoint me." "That sounds really nice, actually." "It does, doesn't it?" She looked at James. "I'm sorry for putting you both through this. And congratulations on your marriage. I wish I'd been there." "We kept it small deliberately," James said gently. "We both hate being the center of attention." Rebecca stood to leave, then paused. "Sheila, I know I don't deserve to ask, but would you come to the courthouse wedding? You don't have to, after everything, but—" "I'll be there," I said. "I'd like that." She nodded, more tears falling, and left quickly. James and I sat in silence for a moment. Then he raised his glass. "To family. Complicated, messy, sometimes threatening to sue you, but family." I clinked my glass against his. "And to husbands who carry lawyer portfolios just in case." "Always," he grinned, "though I'm billing your sister's attorneys for emotional distress." My evening was completely ruined. We ordered dinner and spent the rest of the night talking about anything except lawyers and weddings. Later, walking to our car, James put his arm around my shoulders. "You know what was in my portfolio?" he asked. "Legal precedents, documentation of Rebecca's texts?" "That too. But also," he pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Reservation confirmation for that restaurant you've been wanting to try, the French place on Fifth Avenue. I was planning a surprise date night for your birthday next week." I laughed. Really laughed for the first time all evening. "You brought date reservations to a legal ambush?" "I'm an optimist. Figured we'd either be celebrating our victory or commiserating over escargot." He opened the car door for me. Either way, we'd need a good meal. Rebecca's courthouse wedding happened on a sunny Thursday morning in March. 20 people gathered in the small ceremony room, including both families. Derek wore a simple suit, Rebecca a knee-length white dress she found at a boutique for $300. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, laughing and crying in equal measure. Afterward, Derek's parents hosted a barbecue in their backyard. Someone had strung lights between the trees, and Derek's sister had made a 3-tier cake. It was casual, warm, full of love. Rebecca found me by the drinks table. "Thank you for coming. Of course, you look beautiful. I feel beautiful. Happy." She glanced at Derek, who was unsuccessfully trying to teach our nephew how to throw a football. "This is better than any fancy venue would have been. I just wish I'd realized that sooner." "You realize it now. That's what matters." She hugged me tight. "I'm really glad you're my sister. Even though I refused to fund your dream wedding, especially because of that." She pulled back, smiling. "You were the only one honest enough to tell me I was being ridiculous. I needed that, even if I hated hearing it." Mom approached with a plate of potato salad, looking between us uncertainly. Relations had been strained since the restaurant incident. She'd taken Rebecca's side initially, calling me unsupportive, until Marcus told her what had really happened. "Girls," she said carefully, "I wanted to say something. I'm proud of both of you. Sheila for standing your ground, and Rebecca for growing up and making this day about what really matters." Rebecca's eyes welled up. "Thanks, Mom." "Also," Mom continued, turning to me, "I'm sorry. When Rebecca first told me you refused to help, I judged you without hearing the full story. That wasn't fair. You were trying to support your sister." "I understand," I said. "I should have asked more questions before taking sides." She squeezed both our hands. "Family is complicated, but we figure it out." As the afternoon faded into evening, I watched Rebecca and Derek dance to music playing from someone's phone, surrounded by the people who mattered most. James appeared beside me, offering a beer. "Good wedding?" he asked. "Perfect wedding. Better than lawyers and extortion threats." "Marginally." I leaned against him. "Though your dramatic entrance with the portfolio was pretty memorable." "I've been practicing that poker face for years. Finally got to use it." He kissed the top of my head. "For the record," he said, "I had the documents and screenshots, but I was completely bluffing about criminal charges. Civil extortion is nearly impossible to prove in family disputes." "You what?" "I gambled that her lawyers wouldn't want to risk it. Turned out they'd already figured out their case was weak." He shrugged. "Sometimes legal practice is part law, part theater." "That's terrifying, but effective." I watched Rebecca throw her bouquet, a simple bunch of sunflowers, into a crowd of laughing friends. My cousin Sarah caught it immediately, trying to hand it off to someone else. Marcus joined us, beer in hand. Hell of a turnaround from the restaurant showdown. "You could have warned me better," I said. A text saying, "Rebecca's planning something," was vague. Would you have believed she'd go that far? He had a point. Besides, I knew James would handle it. Guy's scary when he wants to be. "I prefer persuasive," James said mildly. "Sure, persuasive. With a law degree in contacts who hack text messages." We didn't hack anything. Her friend voluntarily showed us because she was uncomfortable being used. "Still scary." Marcus clinked his beer against James's. "Glad you're on our side, though." As night settled in and guests began leaving, Rebecca and Derek stopped by to say goodbye. They were heading to a bed and breakfast upstate for a long weekend. Nothing extravagant, just time together. "We'll see you when we get back," Rebecca said. "Dinner at our place," I offered. "I'll cook, or James will. He's better at it." "This is true," James admitted. "Sheila makes excellent reservations, though." Derek laughed. "Sounds perfect." They left in a shower of biodegradable confetti, Derek's car trailing tin cans that his groomsmen had tied to the bumper. Classic, simple, joyful. Driving home later, windows down and cool spring air rushing in, I thought about everything that had happened. The audacity of the ambush, The shock of James's counter move, the relief when Rebecca finally understood what she'd almost thrown away for a party. "What are you thinking about?" James asked. How close we came to losing each other, Rebecca and me, over something as stupid as venue budgets and wedding expectations. But you didn't lose each other. No, we didn't. People get caught up in moments, he said thoughtfully. Rebecca got swept away by wedding fantasies and couldn't see past them. It took hitting rock bottom, sitting with those lawyers, hearing me dismantle her case, for her to wake up. Do you think she would have gone through with the lawsuit? Honestly, no. I think when push came to shove, she would have backed down. But we'll never know for certain. He merged onto the highway. What matters is she recognized how far off track she'd gone and chose to change course. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then James asked, "Would you have signed if I hadn't shown up?" I considered the question. I don't think so. I would have called you, probably panicked. But I wouldn't have signed under that pressure. I knew I hadn't made any legal promises. Good, because signing would have set a terrible precedent. She'd know she could manipulate you anytime she wanted something. Is that the lawyer talking or my husband? Both. They're not mutually exclusive. He reached over, taking my hand. You did nothing wrong, Sheila. Remember that. You set a reasonable boundary. She tried to bulldoze it, and you held firm. That's healthy. It didn't feel healthy when my sister was threatening to sue me. Well, no. That part was distinctly unhealthy. He smiled. But you survived it. Stronger relationship with Rebecca now. Actually, sometimes conflict forces necessary conversations. At home, we changed into comfortable clothes and collapsed on the couch. James pulled up the documentary we'd been watching, but neither of us paid much attention. My mind kept circling back to that private dining room, the shock of seeing lawyers instead of a sister seeking reconciliation. Can I ask you something? I said during a lull in the documentary. Always. When you walked into that room, were you nervous? Even a little? He considered this. Concerned? Maybe. Not nervous. I'd already reviewed everything, knew our position was solid, but I was angry. Really angry. Someone I love was being threatened and manipulated. His jaw tightened. That portfolio included a few extra documents I didn't mention, counterfiling papers already drafted, just needing signatures. If they pushed, I was ready to bury them in paperwork. My hero, I said, only half joking. Your partner, he corrected. That's what marriage is, having someone in your corner when things get ugly. 3 weeks after the wedding, Rebecca and Derek came to dinner as promised. James made his famous lasagna while I handled salad and garlic bread. The conversation flowed easily. No lawyers or lawsuits mentioned. Over dessert, Rebecca brought up job interviews she'd been having. I'm thinking about switching careers. Maybe something in nonprofit work, event planning for charity organizations. You'd be good at that, I said. You've got vision and organizational skills. Just need to channel them more productively than extorting family members, she said dryly. Growth, Derek said, raising his wine glass. We're all about growth. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. James answered it, returning with my parents and Marcus, who'd apparently coordinated a surprise visit. We brought more dessert, Mom announced, holding a pie. Apple, homemade this morning. What followed was one of those rare, perfect family evenings. No drama, no underlying tensions, just people who cared about each other, sharing food and stories. Dad told terrible jokes. Marcus demonstrated a magic trick he'd learned from a YouTube video, and Derek shared embarrassing stories about his personal training clients. Late in the evening, after everyone had left except Rebecca, who was helping clean up, she paused while drying a dish. I've been seeing a therapist, she said quietly, talking about why I spiraled so badly over the wedding. Yeah? Turns out I've been tying my self-worth to external validation for years. The perfect wedding was supposed to prove I was successful, that my life was on track. She set the dish down. But I was measuring success by completely arbitrary standards. Instagram weddings and magazine spreads instead of actual happiness. That's really insightful. I'm working on it, learning to appreciate what I have instead of obsessing over what I think I should have. She smiled. Derek's been great through all of it. Turns out marrying a good person matters more than the party you throw. Imagine that. She threw the dish towel at me, laughing. Shut up. But seriously, thank you for not signing those papers, for showing up at the courthouse, for this. She gestured around the kitchen. You could have written me off completely. You're my sister. That means something. Even when I'm awful, especially then. James drove Rebecca home afterward. I stood on the porch, watching their taillights disappear down the street, thinking about second chances and the messy business of loving people who sometimes hurt you. When James returned, he found me still on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the spring chill. "Deep thoughts?" he asked, sitting beside me. "Just grateful for you showing up with that portfolio, for Rebecca finding her way back, for all of it." "Even the part with 3 lawyers trying to extort you?" "Well, that part I could have skipped." He laughed, pulling me close. "For what it's worth, I'm grateful too. That whole situation brought us closer as a couple." "Crisis management bonding. Is that what the lawyers call it?" "That's what husbands call it when they get to dramatically defend their wives." He kissed my forehead. "Best billing hours I never charged." Inside, we made tea and settled into our evening routine. As I scrolled through my phone, a notification popped up. Rebecca had posted a photo from our dinner, everyone smiling around our dining table. The caption read, "Family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for." I liked the post, then set my phone aside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conversations, new opportunities for both connection and conflict. But tonight, everything felt settled. The storm had passed, leaving clearer skies and stronger foundations. James was already falling asleep on the couch, his head tilted back. I covered him with a throw blanket and turned off most of the lights, leaving one lamp burning. In the quiet of our home, surrounded by the remnants of a good evening, I finally let myself fully process everything that had happened. The fear when I'd walked into that dining room, the relief when James appeared, the cautious hope when Rebecca apologized, the joy of watching her marry someone who actually made her happy. Life was complicated, messy, occasionally threatening with legal action. But it was ours, flawed, forgiven, and moving forward. And that was worth more than any $50,000 wedding could ever be.